Okay, we're going to be talking about Aardman, including some of its 3D entries. And right off the bat, Aardman has made a lot of stuff. They've made other features and shorts and series like Creature Comforts and other things. Um, this isn't intended to be comprehensive. I'm just doing highlights from Aardman's filmography. Most people are familiar with the original trilogy of sorts of Wallace and Gromit. They're like 20 something minutes to half an hour. These were a big hit during the 90s. There was the first one, A Grand Day Out, where they went to the moon. That was a little less polished. Then there was The Wrong Trousers and A Close Shave. And not even talking about genres or the medium, such as stop motion animation, these are just simply good movies. They're so tight and so dramatic and cinematic while at the same time being laugh out loud funny. Especially with those second two, Nick Park really did something special. He didn't go in feeling he had to fill the preconceived idea of what an animated film should be or what was off limits, imaginative, outside of the box, and despite having funny moments, it took itself very seriously. Now, the Blu-ray, this is the one I watched it on, and for the record, it has been released on a 4K Blu-ray, which I did not upgrade to deliberately, and I'll tell you why. That 4K edition came under a lot of fire from fans because they did not do a new 4K scan. In the case of the first three, Grand Day Out, Wrong Trousers, and Close Shave, um, the contrast was adjusted, but this really just brings out uh, details such as pixelization and highlights it almost in what would naturally be a softer look. And in the case of A Matter of Loaf and Death, which was the fourth Wallace and Gromit half-hour short that was made years later, that one was filmed digitally, and they used a bad AI upscale, which not only put in details that were there in the first place, like these bizarre patterns, but also completely obscured the natural detail that was already there. You love to look at in this beautiful rustic stop motion animation, like the threads and fabric, the words in the background, the painting and handcrafted nature of it. That was all just masked over with this AI filter. And even things that were artistic choices in the original, such as film grain in the opening title to make it look like an old movie, and the baking powder flying up, that was all obliterated by this AI mess. So yeah, the older Blu-ray is the way you want to see this. So anyway, after those three first Wallace and Gromit shorts, this is a triple feature Blu-ray, by the way. But the next one, the first feature, was Chicken Run. That came out in the year 2000. Remember when we always used to call it the year 2000 back in the 90s? Had that dramatic flair to it. So Chicken Run is basically peak Aardman. There's a difference between movies that might be my favorite. I wouldn't say it's my favorite movie of all time. It's one of them, but I couldn't help but get the feeling this is a perfect movie. Like I can find no fault at any turn. It's an hour 25 minutes. The writing, the characters, everything is so tight, and the story is gripping. Again, just like Wallace and Gromit films, it's despite the unusual comical context, the thought of it being funny, of these chickens basically in a prison escape film. It's almost like a wartime prison escape. It doesn't take itself as a joke. It is very serious, and if you let yourself, you just get caught up in that. And the story structure, the dramatic progression is just down to the big conclusion, which had multiple parts, is just perfection. And then came Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, their first feature film. This was also a very good movie. I wouldn't say it's as good as Chicken Run, but it's still part of Aardman's original heyday, I would call it. This movie is really good for the story arc of Wallace and Gromit, of Gromit being the long-suffering character he is. And then after that, what we do is we jump off a cliff, because after that we've got Flushed Away, which is an abomination. If you could take all the worst tropes of animated films, like DreamWorks, just all the worst tropes you can think of, and make a movie entirely like that, that would be Flushed Away. And give it a veneer of being an Aardman movie. I mean, it is an Aardman movie, but it's not stop motion animation. It's lower quality computer animation, not as good as others from the time. That definitely didn't age well. Just a bunch of references and over the top crude humor strung together. Characters that aren't even likable. A story that doesn't mean much of anything, and it isn't anything that you would be motivated to be invested in. Just like mildly amusing, if that, and that's being generous. I don't know if they thought that mimicking what was popular in America at the moment would be a good commercial move, but no, that was pretty bad. Then we've got The Pirates. This had alternate titles. Over across the pond, it was In an Adventure with Scientists. I guess that's not too much of a commercially viable title, so elsewhere it was called Band of Misfits. And this is in 3D. Up until before this, they had been partnered with DreamWorks for their features, but now there was Sony. And you'll notice Sony, as they often do, had these clear cases for their 3D releases with printing on the inside. How did the 3D turn out? Well, it's definitely the best way to see this. It's absolutely beautiful. Like I was saying earlier, that these stop motion animated movies have these rustic, handcrafted uh, characters, set pieces. It's just the kind of thing where every scene feels like a treasure of sorts. You like to ogle it in high definition. So much attention to detail, and the 3D just enhances that all the more so. It's like looking at an old Viewmaster, and uh, your eyes can converge all around the scene to see the handcrafted details. There's plenty of pop outs all throughout. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a strong 3D, but it's definitely moderate, and it's definitely worth it. It really enhances what you're looking at. Now, this isn't Nick Park, just like Flushed Away. Maybe you would enjoy what this movie is, but personally, I just found it bleh. It's nothing like the original run of Aardman movies. The spirit is like in no way comparable at all. Even the character design isn't really all that similar to Nick Park's design. Um, I just found it pretty much obnoxious. Again, no likable characters. Like, it's, I would say it's even worse than Flushed Away in that area. There's like no character that you can sympathize with. Just strikes me as a bunch of random, excessive nonsense. But if you like the eye candy, this is it. Now, staying on 3D, Shaun the Sheep. This was a character from one of the Wallace and Gromit shorts that got a spin-off. It's a long-running TV series, short films, specials. They made so much Shaun the Sheep content. It's crazy. It's a big hit for a reason. It's a enjoyable series, very simple plot, fun characters. Little ones will like it. But anyway, one of these series they made was in 3D, and it was made for the Nintendo 3DS. It's not available anymore, but it has been leaked and upscaled. There are some pop-outs, there's some great angular shots, and the Nintendo 3DS itself makes a cameo appearance. Now, speaking of Shaun the Sheep, he actually had a feature film in 2015, Shaun the Sheep movie. This did get a theatrical release in the US, but it was much more a toned down release than during Aardman's heyday. This didn't get a huge amount of publicity. On Blu-ray, it was released by Lionsgate. In my opinion, this was a return to quality Aardman. It didn't strike me as quite as big budget look as their previous features, but the story and the characters were on point, and that's the most important part, especially considering this was a non-verbal movie, just like the series. Barely any language was present. Even written language was almost barely not existent in the movie. And where it did exist, it wasn't totally necessary to the plot. So much was said through gestures, through expressions, and that shows, and that takes skill to show these nuances of expression on the characters' faces. It involved the sheep going into the city to search for their missing shepherd who was suffering a case of amnesia, and that's a very funny subplot going on there. So many funny moments. This wasn't as big culturally as Aardman's older movies, but this is a treasure. So if you liked the original Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run, this you'll definitely don't want to miss this one. It was a quality movie. Then another low-key, under-the-radar release was Early Man. This one got a 4K release and overseas only standard Blu-ray in the U.S. The standard Blu-ray in the pack is region B locked, but like most 4K discs, Ultra HD, it's region free. Now this was a Nick Park film, it was moderately amusing, but this definitely isn't among the best. I thought this would work much better as a short film. I think the same story could have been told within half an hour and come off much better. It was about cavemen playing soccer, basically. And there were some key funny moments, but they were few and far between, and there's just a lot of fluff, and it just nowhere near the richness of storytelling that Aardman used to be known for. And the same goes for their next movie, a Shaun the Sheep movie Farmageddon. Again, this was a fun enough movie. It was moderately amusing. Again, keep using that phrase, but that's basically what it is. This was did not work well as a feature, not terribly original or inventive, and not enough going on to justify the runtime. This one didn't even get a US release outside of Netflix, but it did get a 4K release overseas. And speaking of Netflix, Aardman's two latest features, which are both sequels to their classic properties, got Netflix only releases. They made a Chicken Run 2 and another Wallace and Gromit feature. And I'm happy to say that both turned out quite good. Chicken Run 2 had different voices for the leads, Rocky and Ginger, and it's about their new life after they escaped from the farm, along with the return of the old villain and their new Rocky and Ginger's daughter, who is growing up and doesn't know the dangers of where they escaped from. So that was a solid movie. It's very entertaining. Lots of great moments. Not as good as the first one, but is still a very good movie. Definitely don't want to miss it if you're a fan of the original. Um, and then the next one, Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul. This one was much better, in my opinion. I really enjoyed this one. The villain in this movie was the return of Feathers McGraw, who was from The Wrong Trousers, that evil penguin house guest. I'm not going to list a whole lot of things about this movie, just see it. Unfortunately, they're not selling Blu-rays of either of these movies. Netflix is the only way in the US. But if you're a classic Aardman fan, this pulls out all the punches. It has a lot of references and just a good, solid, dramatic story like we're used to. And the funny thing is, with Vengeance Most Foul, the original voice of Wallace passed away. So he was recast, of course. But, I couldn't even tell. Unlike with Chicken Run 2, which you could tell, I couldn't even tell here. In fact, it's felt like decades had passed since The Curse of the Were-Rabbit and hadn't even missed a beat. That's what it felt like. The spirit, the tone, the editing, the lighting, just the quality of workmanship was exactly what you would expect, no less. Good character progression, not just for Wallace and Gromit, but for others too. I won't spoil anything. but that was in my book, a resounding success. And the only disappointing part is it would have been nice if these two good Aardman movies got a theatrical release and 4K Blu-ray in the U.S. rather than all these lousy Aardman movies and the years in between. But it is what it is. So check it out. Hope you enjoy it.